Hello, rollers! Welcome back to the Roll Report and another episode of Class and Up the Joint. This is the part of the show where we ask, what can I do? Can I do a different letter this time? Courteous people, cockamamie questions. I'm really stretching, but I'm going for it. We're going to do the whole alphabet. My name is Colin. I am your host. I use they and he pronouns. And as always, I am joined electronically in the studio, as it were, by a fantastic guest. And I know English. And I'm going to let my wonderful guest introduce themselves. Hello, wonderful guest.
Hello. My name is GWILYM, he, him pronouns. I am the writer and game designer for Praxis Studios. I am a game designer making fully original tabletop RPGs, systems, and settings. I always introduce myself by saying I make games for the freaks and the weirdos.
Yes! That makes me so happy.
Yes. Everything I do is heavily based on the idea of creative interpretation, weird ideas, weird angles, and takes on classic genres and genre experiences. I love leaning into the classic tropes of different genres, all the way from cyberpunk to superheroes to classic Tolkienian high fantasy, but with a countercultural twist. Everything I do is heavily influenced by my experience with goth and punk subculture and my time among witches, pagans, Satanists, and other cool fringe groups. I'm just wrapping up the first edition of my games, and I am soon going to be launching the new edition, which is going to get even weirder. It's, in fact, called Praxis Irrational, because it goes on forever, and it's going to get weird.
We love the weird, and you are in very good company. GWILYM, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. I am so excited to talk about Praxis and all these things, and before we get into that, what I want to know is where this started all for you. Like where, if it is where is the first game that grabbed you or how long you've been playing. It's kind of all of those usual introductory tabletop questions wrapped into one. The super heroic origin story, if you will.
Yes. Well, like all super heroic origin stories, this one has a hint of tragedy to it. A tragic backstory. Growing up in white as hell suburban Colorado. I had a very sheltered childhood.
Passingly familiar.
My introduction, like so many of us, was with Dungeons & Dragons. My dear friend Nick, who is also my editor and sort of co-designer, he's probably going to be getting a co-designer credit on Irrational, assuming I can convince him to accept it. Introduced me to 3.5 Dungeons & Dragons when we were in elementary school. Pretty quickly after that, we transitioned to 4th edition because it was right around the time that 4th edition came out. And we kind of started our own group. We got a bunch of friends together, and that group started when we were about 10 years old and literally still meets weekly to this day.
Wow.
Yeah, it has
weekly
been
for
a
that
while.
long.
Yeah.
I mean,
obviously, like there have been like short respites and like we missed the odd week, but it is
really impressive
the same
to keep
group.
a table together for that long. Like for real. Yeah. I'm kind of jealous.
It's been a lot of fun. I absolutely fell in love with it straight from the beginning. It was just this amazing thing that fired my imagination like nothing else. I quickly sort of discovered I probably started DMing like way earlier than I probably should have because I didn't know what I was doing. I was still learning the rules of the game, but I love DMing, and I quickly became our group's primary DM. For the first 10 years, we kind of didn't really have a campaign. We just did like a freak of the week kind of thing with the same characters.
Sure.
And we alternated DMs. Then once we transitioned to actual campaigns, I kind of became the group's primary DM. And I got into my own game design because as we played 4th edition, I love 4th edition. It's a really fun game. It's great for power fantasy dungeon crawls. But as I sort of developed, my storytelling abilities and I developed my own setting, I kind of discovered that D&D just kind of didn't do quite what I wanted it to. I wanted something that was kind of more tailor-made to like my own homebrew setting. something that was a
Yeah.
little bit kinder towards like kind of the fluffier side of role play instead of like D&D is great at combat, but other stuff can be a little bit lacking in.
It is first and foremost a combat simulator, and it's kept that DNA through every edition.
It's also why I love
curious.
4th edition so much. I think it's the best dungeon crawler.
Wow. I mean, this is what I was going to say is like you've played at least 2 editions and maybe up to 4 if your group has kind of moved into 5th and whatever 5.51 D&D, whatever the fuck we're calling it.
A bit of 5th edition. I haven't really played 1D. I've read the books, but I haven't played it.
Sure.
4th edition is my favorite.
Was it? I'm curious what it was about 4th, because that is the one that like many of the guests on our show have just been like, oh, we don't talk about 4th edition. And and then a few people have like really loved it. So I'm curious why that's the one that really spoke to you.
My opinion, the reason I love 4th edition so much is I love games that lean into what they're good at. I like things. I like when a game picks a theme, picks an idea, picks something that it wants to do well, and just leans as hard into it as it possibly can. And I think what Dungeons & Dragons has always done well is it's a combat similar to dungeon crawler. It's about going into dungeons and fighting monsters and gathering treasure and saving the day. And like it's a full game. Like it has stuff for skill challenges and role play and social interactions. But those are really kind of there to serve and set up the dungeon crawl. And I feel like 4th edition was the edition that leaned the hardest into that. It went all in on being a power fantasy. Your characters are medieval superheroes. Even at level 1, you're a big deal. And I just feel like it did what D&D does best, the best.
Sure.
And if I want something different for that, as I often do, I play a different game. And that's also what led me into... I would say that's also what led me into, as I sort of discovered that, like, I kind of want some things that D&D, isn't really built for. I should try some other games. So I started experimenting with World of Darkness and Cyberpunk and GURPS. May seem like an oxymoron if I say I like GURPS. In my defense, GURPS' whole thing is being generic and modular, and it leans super hard into that.
Sure.
So I don't think that's an oxymoron.
Yeah. I think, no, we've had at least one other person that had an unabashed and wholehearted love for GURPS. And it's one of the ones that I hear a lot about and have not managed to play myself.
It's really, really cool.
When did you sort of transition from like, okay, D&D isn't cutting it, there's these other systems, but I think I could do this and I could make my own and lean into the things that I really want for my setting?
There was actually a very, very specific trigger that has kind of actually quite recently come full circle because, unsurprisingly, given that I'm a spooky so-and-so, my favorite film series ever is Ghostbusters. And there was a official Ghostbusters tabletop role-playing game in the late 80s. And when I found this out, there is. And there's a lot about this really cool. There's a lot about this kind of unfinished, but there's a lot about this really cool. It was arguably the very first ever dice pool system, which is a fun bit of mechanical trivia. But when I found this out, I was like, obviously, I have to play this game. The problem is that it's incredibly difficult to find. So for years, I just couldn't get my hands on a copy of it. So that's what set me on making my own games. Was I thought, like, okay, I want to play a Ghostbusters game. I can't find the actual one from the 80s. I'm going to make my own. So my very first foray into game design was a Ghostbusters fan game, which eventually morphed into its own original kind of IP called Boo Inc., which is going to be released as part of Praxis Irrational.
Amazing. Does that lean into the sort of paranormal investigatory side of it?
Yes, leans very, very hard into games are very much mysteries. The premise of that game is every ghost that you encounter has a fetter, an object that linked to their death, their essence is tied to. And in order to neutralize that apparition, you have to figure out what happened to them, what their fetter is, and neutralize it by dunking in irradiated ectoplasm. It's very. I really, really love how that game has approaches mysteries. But yeah, so that was my very first foray. That was originally a Ghostbusters game, fan game that kind of morphed into its own thing. And then once I kind of got the bug, that gave me the idea of like, I want to do high fantasy, but kind of do my own high fantasy. And like GURPS is a little bit better, but it's not quite what I want. Let's make my own high fantasy game. And like 10 years, maybe not 10 years, maybe like 7 years later, Ghosts and Gargoyles.
I feel like that is a not uncommon length of development time because there's so many iterations from the initial idea and initial dice or dice pool to on and on and on.
Something about the Ghostbusters game. Actually, I think it was late last year. I finally got my hands on a copy of the actual Ghostbusters game.
Yes,
it is. There is it is published online by Ghostbusters International, the kind of huge worldwide Ghostbusters fan club.
Yeah.
So I finally managed to get at least a PDF copy of it through there, and I have run it a couple times now.
So my most important question about that, can you in fact cross streams either in the game, the official game, or in Boo Inc.?
Unfortunately, not.
Rude. Rude, I say.
The official game is it's a really, really cool bit of esoterica in that it's a very early sort of RPG, and it has some really, really cool ideas. It has a really unique way of dealing with like injuries, and it ties them in with a sort of inspiration kind of mechanic called brownie points. It's very creative interpretation forward, which I love and which is a big part of my own game design. But the entire rule book is like 60 pages, and a lot of that is randomized tables. It is a very, very rules-like game to the point where it kind of feels a little bit anemic. What's there? There are some amazing ideas, and it really captures the essence of Ghostbusters. But when I run it, I house rolled a lot to add a little bit more meat to the bones and give it a little bit more kind of character progression, and introduce things like crossing the streams as complications. Like that's like kind of hinted at, but the actual rule sets are very, very bare bones a little bit. Like what's there is really cool and gives you a lot of tools, a lot of room for creative interpretation, but it doesn't give you a ton of guidelines, I guess.
Did it end up being at all similar to Boo Inc. as you've iterated that over the years?
Actually, very different.
I'm just total curiosity of like whether or not we have convergent or divergent evolution, so to speak, in there.
No, it was very, very different. Boo Inc. is built on the Praxis system. It's based around the idea of you roll a dice pool of 10-sided dice, a 7+ is a success, and then basically you take your successes and you use those to basically buy changes in the scene to reduce your a ghost's EMF rating, reducing their power, and eventually temporarily dispersing them, although you can't permanently disperse them until you've neutralized their fetter. Or you can use those to like buy hints as part of like an investigation, or like if you're pouring through documents as part of research, get some information on like the haunts you're in, the haunted location.
Is that system kind of replicated across most of the other games in their varying genres?
Yes.
For you?
The Praxis system, the way I describe the Praxis system is it's kind of like the storyteller system in the sense that these are all separate games. They have their own separate universe, their own separate settings, their own separate mechanics, but they are built on the same core system. You also got draw comparisons like the D20 system. And they're balanced differently. They are theoretically all compatible, but they're kind of built at different power levels. They're all balanced differently. They lean into different genre conventions, but that sort of base idea of D10 dice pool based on a attribute and a skill, using successes to buy changes in a scene. A lot of creative interpretation around things like superpowers and spells. And also kind of the core gimmick of the Praxis system, where it gets its name from, is every character has Praxis dice, which I love the idea of tactility and thinginess in game design. So the idea is that ideally this is literally a pool of dice that you have set off to the side. Obviously you can simulate this digitally if you need to and just keep track of the numbers, but ideally it would be like actual dice off the side that you can then draw from and add to certain dice rolls. And
that might give you a higher ratio of success or bump your numbers up.
So that dice pool replenishes under certain conditions depending on the game. and you can only use Praxis dice on roles that you have a specialty in. So a big part of character advancement is increasing your attributes, increasing your skills. Your attributes will also increase how many Praxis dice you have, and then also gaining new specialties so you can use those Praxis dice on a wider range of roles.
That's really cool. I mean, with this system, can you or have you already do it sounds like it would lend itself to the multiverse campaign where we hop from genre to genre, even as the characters might stay the same, but we just adapt them to each new setting. Yeah. So have you already done that either with this long running friend group or others, or were you designing it all with that in mind?
I have not, and sort of.
Sure.
That was kind of an idea. I like the idea of having all these games be sort of loosely compatible, so that if somebody wanted to smash together superheroes and paranormal investigators, or do like a multiverse dimension hopping campaign, the bones is there. Yeah. But I also I really love leaning into the genre conventions of every genre I build a game into. So that kind of necessitates every game is balanced differently. Every game has a different skill list, although there is a lot of overlap, different perks, although there is some overlap. So it's a sort of thing where it's it's not designed to use kind of multiple games at once, but it is designed so that doing that would require minimal house ruling. Yeah, it would require house ruling, but it would be pretty easy.
It's not like going from Powered by the Apocalypse to D&D as you change genres,
exactly.
And I imagine that a lot of the work for the DM or GM stays very similar. There's just a slightly different set of details to focus on.
A lot of the GM's job, again, runs in creative interpretation, because there are very robust guidelines for for different effects and how many successes it costs to enact a certain effect. But what you can do is very, very open-ended. For example, in the high fantasy game Ghosts and Gargoyles, there is no spell list. If you are a caster, you have an in-universe vocabulary of magic words. Those words have different symbols and connotations and sort of things they can do tied to them. And you craft in-universe incantations using those magic words. Get them approved by your GMs. This is what I want. This is what this spell is supposed to do. And then when you cast it, you roll your dice pool, and based on what the spell is, kind of determines the kind of things that it can do. And then based on your roll, it gives you a magnitude, and the GM's job is then, okay, this is what they're trying to do based on what this spell that I've approved. Here's what they rolled. What actually happens?
Yeah. I love that. That is, I think one of the things that many people find frustrating about D&D and some similar systems is how structured they are, in that sense, that there's not actually your flavorful description of the spell you're casting might change, but the actual spell you cast is basically the same game to game, caster to caster, session to session. Which to me, I think leads very, very well into the how have you departed from D&D, and where have you kept some of the things in the same, at least in the high fantasy version?
Yeah, so that is probably the biggest divergence. Is the magic system is very much a centerpiece of Ghosts and Gargoyles.
I'm going to value judgment. I think that is great, honestly. That makes me so excited to just be able to I can make the spell I want.
I love that magic system. It's been so much fun, and I think I've managed a really good balance between giving players a ton of freedom while also making it structured enough that you're never left floundering. With if you're a hybrid class, someone who blends martial and magic combat, like a paladin or a hexblade or a battle mage, you can only prepare a couple spells at a time because they're meant to just be.
It's a resource
situations. But if you're a full caster, you can prepare at character creation. You're probably gonna. It depends on where you allocate different stats, but you're probably going to be able to prepare between 4 and 6 spells at once. That's enough, especially since those can be kind of open ended, and they can be, and their usage case to case can vary a little bit. That gives you a really cool repertoire. And it's just specific enough that, since it has to have, a set number of words in it that have limitations on what they can and can't do. And there are really robust guidelines, tables that give different sort of status effects and things that spells can do, from transmuting materials to applying conditions like stunned or immobilized, and successes and how much those cost in terms of successes. So I've never really had a problem with somebody casting a spell and it takes me more than 2 minutes to decide what it does.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. The other sort of really cool way that I think the game kind of diverges from D&D in a way I always found D&D lacking, and that I'm leaning super hard into in Irrational, is with weapons. Because I want different kinds of weapons to feel different, and I want there to be an incentive to carry more than one type of weapon. So the way I've done that is, first of all, your damage is not really affected by what kind of weapon you use. It's based on your skill with that weapon. Whether you stab somebody with a rondel dagger or a big old axe, it's still a blade that's going to penetrate enough to do some serious damage. Instead, what different weapons do is they have different masterwork qualities. Just the quality of craftsmanship in the weapon boosts, adds to your dice pool, which can increase your damage, but that's based on the quality of the weapon, not the type of weapon.
Right.
But then different types of weapons have different masterwork qualities, which affect how they behave in certain scenarios and give them bonuses, usually rerolls. You can reroll a certain number of failures in certain kind of scenarios. For example, a sword, any kind of weapon that sort of fits a sword profile, because it's very finely balanced and very deft, it lets you reroll failures when you parry with that sword. Whereas if you are carrying a mace, because it is top heavy, it's good at breaking through parries. It gives you rerolls when you
if someone else parries
against
your
someone
attack.
Tries to parry it. Or
that's really cool.
Yeah. Axes deal double damage to different categories of armor, kind of reflecting. And I try and make all these abilities I'm not making a simulation game. It is very much fantasy, but I love when fantasy is grounded in the real world.
Exactly what I was going to say. It's not pedantic. It's not detailed to the point of extreme, but it is trying to actually acknowledge that different weapons will have different effects.
Yeah.
Essentially based on how well you use them. Yeah.
And I'm a huge martial arts nerd. I love historical European martial arts as well as traditional Eastern martial arts. So my goal is always I want to base this in actual techniques, actual schools of fencing and actual historical European combat. But then take that and acknowledge that this is still a game. I want it to be fun. Let's take it to the nth degree. Let's make it work in the game. So another thing that I'm really proud of is in an expansion for Ghosts and Gargoyles that adds a bunch of new weapons. I introduced pikes.
Ooh,
and this is the only case I've ever seen in a game where there is gameplay mechanics for using a pike correctly. The way that is...
No, usually it's just, here's a big fucking two-handed polearm. Go to town, I guess.
Yeah. So the way that is reflected is you can use it as just a normal spear and jab with it. Realistically, that would be difficult, but it's a game. I don't want to hinder you for carrying a cool weapon. But the masterwork quality that the pike has is if you use it to parry a mounted charge, somebody on horseback who charges you, to simulate, setting the pike and receiving that charge, if you parry a mounted charge, you both get rerolls on the roll, and also if you roll any net successes, you deal those net successes as damage to the rider.
That's really
as
cool.
They dash themselves on your pike.
Yeah, well, and you feel bad for the horse, but we can assume that it's all going to be fine.
It is literally built into the game that animals do not get hurt.
Wow. That bold move. I approve. I feel like so many people so many parties that I've played with and that have been in my games my familiar has plot armor, right? And I'm like, well, the animal you adopted does. The familiar you can summon anytime you want. No, that doesn't have plot armor.
that was something that I wrestled with a lot because I'm a big old animal rights activist. I love animals to absolute bits, and I want the games to be fun. I want there to be consequences, but also I feel like, encouraging, like I wanted to have, like, there is a class in Ghosts and Gargoyles called the Beastmaster, which is built around taming animals. I want there's to be consequences to bringing those animals into battle, but it's also I don't want it to just be needlessly depressing.
Right.
So the way it works is, first of all, animal companions, both mounts and tamed animals, are not meant to be taken into combat. First of all, they are meant to be utilities. These animals are not supposed to fight for you. They will, under certain circumstances, if you get certain perks or if you are a Beastmaster, the Beastmaster class. But the default assumption is that the animals are there to provide utility. They add their skills to things. They're there to track. They're there to carry things. They're there to deliver messages. If you have trained messenger birds, they're there for utility, not combat. With the right perks, you can bring them into combat. And the assumption is that if you enter combat, they will run away and they'll be somewhere safe when you're done. In order to bring your animals into combat, you have to either take the Beastmaster class or take a perk. That means that a certain class of animal will fight for you. But in doing so, you are making a conscious decision to take that animal into combat. And that means there is a risk that they are going to get hurt. And the game explicitly leaves it up to the Dungeon Master, where it's like, if an animal is reduced to 0 hit points, or it's actually integrity in this case, they either run away and cannot back to the wilds and cannot be reclaimed. So they're not dead, but you have lost them forever. Or if it makes more sense, they might be killed. But
I mean, I appreciate offering that choice. And honestly, the player should know if you are bringing an animal into a combat, I think you're opting in to the chance that it might get hurt in that way.
That's the idea, is to sort of make that more of a conscious decision to lend it more weight. It's a similar kind of thing with mounts, where there's actually fairly little utility in attacking a mount over the rider. And again, the consequence for your horse reaching 0 integrity is not them dying. It's they buck their
rears
rider.
up, throws you off, and they...
so that rider is dashed to the ground, they're stunned, they're ripe to be finished off themselves, and the horse bolts. But can potentially be recovered later if the rider manages to survive the rest of the fight.
Hopefully. You mentioned both kind of class advancement and classes in general. I'm curious how those work, if they are similar or dissimilar to D&D in that way.
Very different.
But also just how does it work within Ghosts and Gargoyles?
So character creation, it's a similar sort of fantasy race class structure. Lots of your classic fantasy races and classes. We've got dwarves, we've got humans, we've got gnomes, we have, I think, 4 different varieties of elf. As well as half-elves of all varieties. Half-orcs. I think the only fully original race I have are Bastet, which are cat people. They're Khajiit, but more Egyptian-coded. And Moriaks, who are living suits of armor. But what your fantasy race does is every fantasy race comes with a boon and a bane, which are kind of passive abilities. They're much more role-play focused. That are kind of results of the magic in that class's blood. For example, dwarves, reflecting, that they are created by the gods to shape the environment and be master craftspersons who build incredible cities and craft beautiful objects. Their boon is that when they attempt a crafting roll, if they don't like the results, they can roll again and take the new result. But their bane is because dwarves value things, beautiful handmade things so highly. They're notoriously awful hagglers. So every item you buy for your own personal use is a little bit more expensive.
That was pretty good. Yeah.
And then classes. Much less structured than D&D, because I wanted you to be able to blend different classes of different fighting styles and take them in different directions. So what all your class determines is what access you have to magic, what kind of magic you have access to: arcane, infernal, divine, or druidic. And whether you are a full-fledged caster or a hybrid class, sort of what level of magic you have, and your starting specialty. Again, you can only spend Praxis dice on certain rolls if you have a relevant specialty. And the class specialties are the most broad and the most interesting. You get your other specialties mostly through perks, which tend to be things like skills sort of have different sub-skills. So, for example, there are only two sort of base social skills, manipulation and persuasion. But under those, you have potential specialties in like diplomacy, bluff, seduction, intimidation, etc.
So
but
it's
your
very
class
customizable
yeah.
as well. Yeah.
But your class specialties are things like the rogue class is you can use Praxis dice on any roll made in the pursuit of something illegal.
Awesome.
If you are in a situation where the law is a concern, so probably not in like an ancient dungeon, but if you are in a city and you're doing something that can get you in trouble with the guards, you can use your Praxis dice.
Yeah. Cool. Does advancement work similarly, or I'm going to take a quick guess because you've said enough that I'm curious to see if I'm honing in on how you've built it a little bit. It seems like when you advance, you're choosing there might be a level or something, but essentially you're going to choose a new perk or a new specialty or subspecialty at milestone-ish or XP-ish or something totally different. Point buy. Okay.
Yeah, point buy. The way the game works is every quest you undertake, you get experience, and then you can spend that experience to buy additional dots in your attributes, in your skills. Additional dots in your attributes can also be reflected in your Praxis dice because every class, their Praxis dice equal to the sum of two attributes. So if you increase either of those attributes, you also get more Praxis dice. You get perks, which can provide passive bonuses. A lot of them provide additional specialties. Some of them provide kind of other abilities. For example, there is a kip up perk that allows you to stand up from being knocked prone for no action. Various other bits and bobs. There are some magic perks. For example, there's a bless weapon magic perk, which allows you to channel a spell or other incantation through a weapon. And so every adventure you get a little bit of experience you can use to immediately buy a new toy. And each of those are small enough that, it leads to a fairly smooth progression curve, but it also means that you have something tangible each turn. You have a new specialty that you can use Praxis dice on, or an attribute or a skill has gone up. So that only translates to one extra dice in your dice pool, which is a 40% chance of an extra success. Or that dice only has a 40% chance of being an extra success. But because it's adding an extra dice to your dice pool, it feels tangible. You can see it in a very real way, even though it's actually quite a slow progression. Yeah. So
and we all love throwing shiny math rocks around. Like more is more,
and you get to throw more.
Exactly.
So it's just really nice. It's just really nice balance of kind of every single adventure you get new toys to play with without exploding into being insanely overpowered super quickly. And the other really big part of character progression is your equipment. Especially in Ghosts and Gargoyles, there are different tiers of equipment, usually about 6 tiers. And you're meant to be constantly working towards upgrading your equipment because every upgrade you get, it improves the masterwork qualities of your weapons and armor. It improves the amount of protection they offer or the amount that they add to your attack dice pools.
Yeah, I'm curious in this one, just mechanically how advancement of weapons works. If I, as a player, am saying I'm going to spend some downtime tinkering on it, doing a thing, or I'm going to go visit this blacksmith that we met who's really good at what they're doing, and they're going to. I think also in this one, like, how does the naming conventions work? It's like I start with basic weapon 1, and then I have advanced, and then I have masterwork, and then I have masterwork 2. I'm now into the details because I'm curious.
I'm happy to talk about it. The different qualities of weapon are based around different in-universe sort of crafting lineages and materials. So at the lower end, you have just basic cheap mass-produced iron weapons, then steel weapons, then you get into orcish weapons, elven craft, bastet craft, and dwarven weapons. Doesn't necessarily reflect the race of the person who made the weapon, but rather the smithing tradition they
the
followed.
overall quality sort of thing. Yeah.
Just because the smith is a dwarf doesn't mean everything they make is dwarven quality, because dwarven quality means this is the epitome of dwarven mastercraft.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, and each tier, it adds a quality bonus to your attack dice pools. So iron starts at a +0, and dwarven is a +6. So that is extra dice added to your dice pool when you attack with that weapon. And also, all the weapons have these masterwork qualities, and the magnitude of that masterwork quality is also based on the tier. For example, again, a sword allows you to reroll failures on a parry. So with a iron sword, you can reroll 1 failure. With a steel sword, you can reroll 2. With a dwarven sword, you can reroll 6.
Cool. I like this so much. So we spent a lot, or not a lot. We spent this chunk of time on Ghosts and Gargoyles. I think I have maybe it is a 2-part question. Maybe it's 2 totally different that I'm thinking of, which is, one is, you and I were just talking kind of before we started about the iterations are going through and how a new, potentially infinite edition is on the way. And so I think partly, or maybe, one question is, what are some of the updates you've made now that you've gotten some playtesting and are doing the things? What is the second edition like? And the other is really more the like, I like that we've been talking about Ghosts and Gargoyles as it is something analogous to many of our listeners who come from a D&D background, but like, how many other games have you made across multiple genres? I don't know if we want to just do like a fast rundown of like name and genre, because my perception is like a lot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. If we really want to, I could literally list them off.
Kind of up to you. Like I said, like I think I am asking from a place of like you. It seems like you have developed this system that is really applicable to many different genres, and then kind of gone over the last chunk of time.
Yes.
Which genre do I feel like queering up and making a little more witchy and punk and weird in this particular way?
There are currently 10 different Praxis system games in the work. Then on top of that, I am also working on 4 different core systems, each of which has at least 6 games in the works for it.
Oh God! Okay,
I have about 40 games in the works at the moment. Those range
amazingly
from
prolific.
Yeah, those are at various stages of development. They range from a little bit more than idea and sort of like taking notes on like core mechanics and themes, all the way to things that are basically done. Most of them more towards the other end. The non-Praxis games that are kind of the most in progress is my sort of secondary system is the Shtick system, which I mostly use for cyberpunk games. And I am actively developing my cyberpunk game, Cyberpunk Noir, which hopefully going to be coming out next year. That was actually technically the first game that I released, but I've since taken it down because sort of as I developed as a developer, I sort of realized that it wasn't up to my standards anymore. And so I've been working on sort of revamping it and kind of focusing on the Praxis system while having that in the back burner. But yeah, so got a lot of games. But in terms of Praxis, so the main ones, the main genres that I touch on is the first edition games are Ghosts and Gargoyles and Ufpau Zako, which is a superhero game. Then there is an expansion for Ufpau Zako called Bloodletting, which focuses in on, which is a gothic urban fantasy expansion that focuses in on the magic side of that setting and a secret society of vampire slayers.
Cool.
And in Irrational, Bloodletting is going to be expanded to its own standalone RPG that can either be used fully compatibly with Ufpau Zako as the magic side of that setting, or run entirely on its own. Because at the moment, it does require the Ufpau Zako rulebook. Then I've also got Boo Inc., Paranormal Investigation. I've got a Pirates game in the works with some interesting ideas for ship-to-ship combat. I've got a sci-fi game in the works with with some cool ideas for starship combat. I've got a zombie apocalypse game, which is basically what if the Men in Black fought zombies instead of aliens?
Awesome.
Fun fact, there is also a Men in Black RPG. It was made. I think it was made by the same people who made the Ghostbusters RPG.
I mean, good for them. Like, why not? We've got the IP already. It exists in the world. Like, lean into it. Yeah.
I have a Weird War II game about the old gods kind of being resurrected and brought back into the world in World War II by the fell machinations of the Anarabi, and the chosen few being recruited by all sides of the war to try and turn the tide. It's got some really interesting ideas in regards to divinity. I've got another high fantasy game inspired by Eastern mythology, because I didn't when I was making my classic high fantasy game, I wanted to lean into European high fantasy. I wanted it to be knights and dragons, but I didn't want to just throw in little bits of Arabic and Eastern mythology in there, just like tokenism. That feels reductive and redundant. Also, it's not fully exploring the things.
Yeah.
If I'm gonna make a game inspired by Chinese, Japanese, Korean mythology, I'm gonna make an entire game dedicated to that. So that is another project that I have in the works. Sorry, I'm talking very, very quickly.
No, this is great. I mean, again, I said give me the rundown of all of them, and if we're going through even just the top 10, this is
Then I have a Weird West game, and the Wild Wild West with magic and undead and cryptids galore, and I have a 1960s spy pastiche.
Cool.
Which takes a similar kind of idea of all these games tend to have some sort of core system similar to the magic system in Ghosts and Gargoyles. That's very much built around this idea of super open-ended to allow you to create your own superpowers, your own spells, your own gadgets in the case of the spy game that can do anything you want, and then providing really robust mechanics for interpreting those when you actually use them.
Yeah. Amazing. What may be a slightly sensitive question, I don't know. I'm curious about your approach to designing games that are leaning heavily into Chinese mythology or other regions of the world, other ancestries that you and I can't necessarily claim on our own. I realize I'm making a bit of an assumption there, but
no. Absolutely.
And so how do you feel about that? How do you handle that? Do you try to make sure that people of those countries and ethnicities are contributing to the project?
Yes.
What is your process around kind of doing that?
It's something I feel very, very strongly about, and I take very, very seriously. Cultural misappropriation is no joke. I have experienced a little bit of that in the sense of subcultural misappropriation. I am a goth, and I see that.
And people fucking love to cosplay at goth.
Yeah, so and it's not nice, and I'm a straight cis man in goth. My femme friends have it so much worse, and it makes me so angry, especially since at least one of them is Chinese. So that's the first thing is I do try and bring in people actually from these cultures when possible. I said with my friend Levi Lee, who does the art for most of my books, is Chinese Malaysian. So they have been consulting a little bit on that particular game. Especially before I released the Weird West game, since Indigenous American culture and mythology features very heavily into that. I really want to bring in a professional sensitivity reader, which means that it's going to be a while before I can publish that game, because it's going to be a while before I can afford a sensitivity reader. But if that's what has to happen, that's what has to happen.
I mean, I just appreciate that, having that perspective on it, because I feel like it is... I self-select for a community where people care about that a lot, but I think in the game community as a whole, that's not necessarily the case, as we're seeing when what's they're called re-releasing Obo I don't even remember because I blocked it from my fucking memory. The Ojibwe, the really offensively white people trying to make a Japanese mythology RPG that made most people very upset.
I remember seeing this. My first
anyway.
was, oh cool, Japanese inspired RPG. Then I looked at the Kickstarter or whatever it was, and like, there sure aren't any Japanese people on this dev team.
Yeah. So I all that to say, I really appreciate that it is worth waiting to be able to put out a game if you're like, I need to hire someone to look at this and make sure I'm approaching this in a conscientious way.
And the other part of that is that doesn't mean to say that I think that, as a white person, I shouldn't touch on these cultures at all. Quite the contrary. I think it's awesome to be interested in these other cultures and to want to bring that, into your work. And to want to, draw from different cultural inspirations and showcase these, cool bits of world mythology that I'm interested into. I'm very interested in occult practice from all the world. I'm very interested in Chinese numerology. But that doesn't exonerate me from the responsibility of, doing it sensitively. So my sort of watchwords when I'm doing is, first of all, I want to do my research whenever I'm writing like a character or a bit of mythology that's inspired by another culture. I try and do a fair bit of research before I do that. For example, in a campaign that I ran in my superhero game, there is a character who is African. And so I did some research into different South African ethnicities and cultures. I decided on making that character Zulu. So I tried to do some research on the Zulu people. And then I also try to make it very clear in my framing that this is still an outsider's perspective. I am not speaking for this culture. That's a lot easier and doesn't necessarily require a sensitivity reader if it's just a part of a game that has a different focus. Like that's just a single character in a superhero game, or again, that same superhero game, I have there is a sort of center of superhuman activity in Shangri-La. So I did some research into Tibetan culture and kind of the mythology around Shangri-La. But that's not the centerpiece of the campaign. That's just a small bit of world building in this overall thing. If I was making a game that was centered around that, for example, my other game that is centered around Southeast Asian mythology, then I think for something that is that focused on it, then I need to bring in some kind of sensitivity reader. And the final piece is, just because I'm doing this with all the good intentions in the world does not mean I'm not going to fuck it up. And people have every right to call me out on that. And it is my moral responsibility to listen to them.
Yeah, sure. I mean, this, I don't want to derail us into heading off in this way, but I think this touches on something that I've thought about a lot, of the difference between cultural appreciation and appropriation, and where it's not even where it's okay to bring cultures that are not your own into your creative process, but where and how you can do it with sensitivity and appreciation, and not just kind of be like, I think that's mine, I'm gonna put it in my game now, and I know nothing about it.
My biggest advice for doing that, and what I try to live by, is the panoply of human experience and what can be returned to people is so wide. There really aren't any hard guidelines. So I think the best you can do is care. If you approach that kind of world building, that kind of writing, caring about the cultures that you're drawing inspiration from, and being aware that you need to try not to, when approaching, drawing inspiration from other cultures in writing, game design, and world building, I think the best you can do is approach it conscientiously and be aware that, this is not your culture. You're, trying to, share this cool thing you're interested in, but you also need to do so sensitively. I think as long as you approach it being aware and caring, that's really all that can be asked. And if you do that, you're going to be in pretty good standing. You also need to be aware that just because you're approaching with good intentions, that doesn't exonerate you from responsibility to own up if you mess up anyway. But it also means that, you should be in a good position to take that criticism gracefully, and you deserve the grace to show that you can take that on board and change. It's important to listen when people call you out on your bullshit.
That is a lesson I think many people have not learned. Or even both halves of it, right? There's calling someone out with some sensitivity and hopefully assuming best intentions, and there is receiving that feedback and that calling out, hoping that the person who is doing so.
I think that if you
intentions.
approach, your writing, and this is what I try to do, with that awareness of I want to frame this so I'm not speaking for this culture. I'm going to try and be sensitive. you can still mess up. You're human.
Yeah.
But I think that intention will shine through, and it means you're going to attract people who like actually care and whose reaction is not going to be this person is a raging asshole. It's going to be, I see this person is trying, but they messed up. So I feel comfortable telling them in a calm, constructive manner why I think this is hurtful. Obviously, you're still going to get people who just want to be angry for the sake of being angry. That's the nature of the internet. But I think if you put that kind of good intentions out into the world, it tends to attract at least a little bit of it back.
Yeah. I think it was. I think so, and I think it is an more optimistic view of people that I like to hold than instead of assuming that everyone on the internet and everyone in the world is just terrible. Which it kind of feels like every once in a while.
And by the gods, those people are loud, but there are also good, amazing people out there. And something that's very important to me is building community. And those are the people who I want who I want in my community. I want the cool people from different cultures who are making art and who can give me constructive feedback on my own art and share their cultures. And I want to learn about those cultures. And I want the creatives and the weirdos around me. And of course, that means I got to put up with the assholes and the fascists, but we make art. We make art to fight those people as well.
Around the edges. 100%. Well, and I think this leads to the other question that I wanted to ask of speaking of the community of weirdos and freaks and awesome people that we surround ourselves with. You mentioned trying to bring those into games, specifically having a weird Western and these ideas. So I'm curious, as you are world building and designing, how you're trying to bring I guess I'm going to call it your own sensibilities into the systems, and not into systems, but into the worlds. Like, because D&D at its inception is racist and very sexist. And luckily, we've mostly are taking slow steps away from those roots. But it was at one point, man, kill all orcs. Doesn't matter. They're all evil.
And I try to do is it's very much baked into both my systems and my settings. I really love when systems reflect the themes of the setting and tie in with those themes. It's like even with the Praxis system that deals with various different genres that have different themes. There's always this idea of creative interpretation and wanting to, and this idea of symbolism. I'm fascinated by world occult practices. I'm extremely autistic, and my special interests show up all over my work with inspiration from different occult practices. I have different types of power sets and magic in my superhero and Gothic urban fantasy game, inspired by everything from Chinese numeracy to Wicca to Haitian voodoo. Actually, the Haitian term is, I think, voodoo, and voodoo refers specifically to the Louisiana practice. I think. I'm also probably mispronouncing the Haitian word.
Yeah, no, that tracks.
Anyway, these are all things that I'm super fascinated by that come into everything I think. Also, if you're really into goth and punk music, you'll notice a lot of band names show up in my work. I've literally based a lot of characters sort of in the canon for my various games off of friends who are in bands. And artists I really admire and respect. Awesome. Like all the stuff with like weapons and Ghosts and Girls, inspired by like this deep fascination with historical European martial arts and sort of weapon smithing and martial techniques. Into my superhero games, in my Eastern fantasy game, I draw on a lot of inspiration with a very deep fascination with Southeast Asian martial tradition, particularly Chinese martial arts, and the spiritual and philosophical aspects of those. And it all comes in this very sort of countercultural, goth-inspired packaging. My games are always very much about, again, these very core themes of the disenfranchised rising up and protecting each other, and this idea of community. I'd love to touch on, since I've talked so much about my high fantasy, and talk about Pauzak a little bit, because
superheroes.
The core precept of that game, the entire purpose of that game is this. I want to lean to the idea, like this world, superheroes, you are vigilantes. You are not sanctioned by any governments. You are operating outside the law because people need protecting by the systems that leave them to die. In this game, the heroes are people from the LGBT community. They're ethnic minorities. They're people from they're kids who grew up with nothing. using incredible gifts that they've either, gotten by happenstance or developed through hard work, usually a combination of the two, and standing up for their communities against the corrupt systems that have left those communities to die. It's very much a game in which you will be fighting the police just as much, if not more, than you're fighting supervillains.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like more. It sounds a lot less. I think about Age of Apocalypse as a spoilers for 80s era X-Men comics. It's this whole multi-comic intrigue featuring the entire alternate universe cast of X-Men and villains in different roles, and it all leads up to Magneto fucking punching Apocalypse with a magnetic punch. Like, all of this 100+ issues of intrigue and drama and theater and not always punching people, and you end the series with a punch. And so it feels like Oof Pauzako is much more you're using the sound effects of classic comics to indicate what the genre and style of the game, but the content of it and the themes you're exploring are not the sort of adolescent power fantasy of becoming Superman and being able to punch God.
Yeah. I very much wanted to skew the system more towards lower power heroes. As I said, there's still plenty of classic campy comic book fun. You're still going to be fighting giant robots and punching supervillains.
Sure.
But there's also this very big focus on like, why are you doing this? And it's because you want to protect your neighborhood. You want to protect people who you grew up with, who you know that are being targeted by gangs, by the police themselves, by giant monsters and alien invasions, because you live in a world where that shit happens. And nobody else is going to stand up for those people. Nobody else is going to save them through whatever power you've been given, some kind of power. And God damn it, you're going to use it.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's interesting. Like most comics and existing comic book games, they really don't necessarily focus on a more ground level and community approach to the aftermath of a superhero fight, for example. It's always a very top-down approach, and you only ever see the heroes and the villains and like their small ancillary characters, but not the impact of Lex Luthor's latest mad science going amok and needing to be smacked down by Superman on the community where the smackdown happened. And it feels like that is where you were leaning harder.
That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying, and in Irrational, I'm trying to lean even harder into that idea. I've got some ideas for actually systematizing sort of different power levels of heroes. Because in the first edition, it sort of always assumes this kind of power level of like, you're superhuman, but you're not Superman. You can't punch through entire planets, but you are definitively superhuman. Even if, depending on what power sets you choose, you may not technically be superhuman, but your power level is equivalent. And it's like how Batman technically doesn't have powers, but he's not human. But in the revised edition, I'm introducing different power levels, so you can adjust your character to go all the way from you are a completely normal human who has trained their ass off, all the way up to, it doesn't go all the way up to like Superman level insanity, because the entire game skews much more grounded, but it can go all the way up to then like you have powers, but they're very minor and they just sort of accentuate your trained abilities up to you are fully superhuman. You can shoot fire out of your hands, and you're still trained hard to use that power, but like you are now fully superhuman.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I love that. Hello, rollers. Welcome to your mid-roll. It is, as usual, I, your debatably friendly host, Colin. And we have something slightly different again this week. Now, those of you who are current will know that yesterday, October 28th, was the new season drop for our dear friends at Unbalanced Encounters. And now is the perfect time to get sucked into their brilliant, amazing world of actual play audio drama. Here's just a little teeny taste of what this new season contains.
Fantasy Western! That's what we're doing for the new arc of Unbalanced Encounters, the only show that dares to ask, what if Dimension 20 was yeehaw as hell? If you're new to the show, all you need to know is that every episode will have you sobbing from laughter, the drama, or when I come to your house and break your knee. Go check out the Misfortunate Four. We got disaster cowgirl heiresses, trickle-down generational trauma, nepo baby witches, and plenty of moose. Episodes run about 90 minutes and are highly polished by a team of mages working around the clock in our secret studio deep beneath the Appalachian Mountains. And if they complain, we simply break their knee. So head on over to unbalancedencounters.com or find Unbalanced Encounters wherever pods are casted.
That's right. Catch up on the Misfortunate Four. Season premiere was yesterday, and new episodes coming at a steady clip for the next while. I got to work on this season. It is so good. You will not regret any moment of your listening to it. So, promo aside, thank you for listening. We really appreciate you being here with us as always. And we hope that you're enjoying the show. If you are, why not share that enjoyment with a friend or two, perhaps by leaving us those 5-star ratings and reviews on the podcast platform of your choice, or simply telling a friend to give us a listen. That would be so cool. And then if you really, really like what you're hearing, and your friend really likes what they're hearing, you can follow us on social media at The Roll Report Cast on Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky, and maybe go one small step further and throw us $1 or whatever you can spare over at patreon.com/The Roll Report. We super appreciate it, and hopefully you do too, or at least appreciate the show. That's all for this time. Enjoy the rest of the episode. Bye. So you were mentioning kind of the second edition and Irrational, and I want to shift a little bit and talk about that, which is maybe to start by like, if I was tracking numbers right, it sounds like Praxis as a system and its published games have been around for between 7 and 10 years. Am I right? Did I get it close?
In some capacity, yes.
In some capacity,
I've only been publishing them for the past 2 to 3 years.
Okay,
I've sort of been, but it's existed as something that I've been working on for about 8 years now. Okay.
So it existing and available to the public for 3. I think is maybe my first question is like, what have you learned from the first iteration that you're hoping to significantly change in the second edition, Irrational?
Tons.
Okay.
I think a lot of what I learned has to do with ideas of awareness of like, I love this idea of like, I want to pick a thing that my games do well and lean super hard into those. So I've sort of, tried different ideas and seen what works and what fits the themes and the design philosophies of my games. And while we're still on those, I've tested different sort of systems for handling things mechanically. And I've been drilling down on that balance between creative interpretation and robust guidelines to help with actual interpretation. For example, and also, I've made my game design a lot more elegant. I've married a lot more mechanics together and made them more consistent. For example, in first edition Praxis system, the way you handle skill checks is I didn't want it to just be a binary pass-fail where you make a single dice roll and you either pass or fail. I wanted there to be more involved in that. Because I wanted these games to be more than just combat. I want using your skills to feel like an event. Like if you are a master locksmith, I want picking a lock to feel cool. So the way I've handled that in first edition is with skill challenges. And the idea is that you declare what you're doing, what skill you're using, and based on the difficulty and how long that skill challenge is, you have to roll a certain number of successes in a certain number of rolls. And with every roll, based on sort of how you're doing, with every roll, the GM can narrate. So it turns, picking a lock, instead of just being one roll, you either pass or fail, it turns into, okay, I'm going to pick this lock. I roll my first. That's a good roll. Okay.
Yeah, it's almost like each tumbler going one at a time of the lock.
You definitely go in there and your expert hands feel the tumblers things. Next roll, okay, that's a bad roll. You slip up momentarily and you almost feel your ratchet crack, but you manage to catch it at the last second before you break your pick. Next roll, you get the rest of the successes you need. Having a better idea of the strength and the tensions of this lock, you're able to slide the rest of those pins into place, and the lock pops with a satisfying click. And it makes the rogue feel cool for not just their ability to stab, but for their thief skills.
Totally.
The problem with that is that while that system works quite well for that. There's kind of an audible ka-chunk whenever you do it. There's very much this case of like, okay, I'm going to pick the lock. So now we are kind of stepping out for a second to do this skill challenge really quickly.
The rhythm of the game completely changes if you're having to make multiple rolls. Yeah, totally.
And you can sort of interspace that with combat by like having them just make a roll every round if like they're trying to pick this lock while the rest of the party is defending them from monsters.
Right.
Or you may need to just sort of step aside. Let's just do all these rolls really quickly at once, which it takes like 5 minutes. It's not a big deal, but it's not the smoothest thing in the world. For Irrational, I'm experimenting with marrying those skill challenges more with the way that you interpret incantations with spells, which is where you roll your your dice pool, and then you use those successes to buy changes in the scene.
Right.
And the idea that you can, with skills, you do a similar thing, but you buy small incremental changes in the scene that can then add to a bigger change. For example, the same kind of lockpicking thing is, instead of it being just a kind of a set-aside skill challenge, oops, I hit the mic, you can use your successes on your lockpicking roll to pick certain tumblers. And over multiple rounds, you can trip all the tumblers and eventually pick the lock.
Right.
And the fail condition then becomes not you fail, you don't get enough success in enough rolls, but if at any point during when you're trying to accumulate successes towards your end goal, if you fumble and roll no successes, the whole thing goes wrong. That also makes it a lot more elegant in terms of social encounters, which I do have a method for handling those in terms of the old skill challenges, but again, it's a little bit clunky. It's got some cool ideas, but it's a little bit clunky. It makes it a lot smoother to do with that when you can do things like, I have rolled my seduction roll, and what I want to use my successes for is I want to lower this NPC's guard. I want to make them feel comfortable around me. Okay, that's gonna sort of provide some sort of
it's gonna change kind of the role play and dialogue of our scene.
Dialogue, and it's going to slowly, incrementally move you towards being able to convince this NPC of whatever you want. It also makes it a lot easier for other players to contribute and help. Because in the old system, the way you help with a skill challenge is if you have training in the appropriate skill, you can make one roll for the skill challenge, which adds to the number of successes accumulated, but doesn't count as one of the allowed rolls. Very simple way to handle it, but it means that if you're not the main person, you can't do a lot. But with the new system I'm testing out for Irrational, it means that different characters can all contribute equally to building up towards a common goal, and also they can use different skills to do so.
It's not everyone in the group needs to know and be an expert in lockpicking in order to help the thief do the thing.
Exactly.
They can contribute in the other way.
They can contribute in their own ways. Like, I don't know, maybe like the wizard can say like, oh, I have a incantation pair that allows me to summon fire. Could I use my knowledge and my skill with the arcane to like create it like just hot enough to like heat the lock to like relax the springs? Sure. Roll your mind plus arcana.
I mean, I love this generally, and no matter the system, I'm like, if you can justify why you should be making that roll to me, absolutely. Like, I want you to roll more shiny math rocks. That's
very much the entire idea behind Praxis system always, and leaning even more to that in Irrational, is letting your players play with their toys. Like these like cases of like them coming up with creative uses for their skills, for their abilities, for their powers, for their spells, for their equipment. These are not like weird edge cases that were like, as a GM, you're going to be stuck in that, annoying place of like, that does sound cool, but it also really screws my plans and my encounter balance. Like, no, that is how the system is meant to be played.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, to that exact point, I think I have said a number of times that I think that is an inexperienced or bad DM. If your players can do something that's going to fuck up your plans so badly, you want them to not do it, or you tell them that they can't. I think it is a measure of a decent to good DM. If you're like, no matter what you do, I can roll with it. Yeah, that is my job. You know. Yeah.
And I want to provide a game that makes that sort of helps the GM do that as much as possible. Yeah. Like, you want your friends to be able to do the cool thing and play with their toys, and so do I.
Yeah, that's what we're all about, for sure. I had half of a thought, and it's something to do with irrational, and maybe it is just what more is going on in this second edition and ongoing that we want to talk about.
So the idea behind irrational is I love the idea of treating my work like a living document. Another one of the things that got me into tabletop role playing, the thing that got me into like RPGs and gaming first was when I was very young. I got very into the Flash-based RPGs made by Artix Entertainment, Adventure Quest, Dragon Fable. I was in the alpha for Adventure Quest Worlds.
Awesome.
And I just love those games so much. And I love that company. They all seem like just awesome, incredible creative people. And they have last year I actually got back into those games because I'm sort of thinking about them. I realized I really missed those. I used to love those games. Dragon Fable has been updated weekly for the past 20 years.
Jesus.
It's like
way to commit to the bit, guys.
Yeah. And it's like that's what I loved so much about those games is like they change week to week, and there were like these really like fun like development notes that the head writer Artix would write, sort of keeping the fans abreast of like here are all the new changes, and they were like really fun and conversational. It's like that's what I want to do. That's how I want to do my game designs. I want to have this rapport with my audience, and I want to be constantly updating it and improving it and adding content. So that's the idea behind Irrational. Is I've kind of been doing that with my games already because they've kind of been in the situation where it's like they're complete game, but like I've always been like fine tuning them and sort of working on the actual presentation sort of as I get my feet, is like doing this professionally and not just for my own group. Where a bunch of notepad documents with different thought vomit in them is fine, but that's not good for an actual paid product and making it professional. But I also kind of had this, worry of like, a lot of people when they buy a game, they do want just a finished product. So what I decided to do is I said I am working on the final updates for the first edition games for Ufpao Zako and Ghosts and Gargoyles. Once those are out, the prices are going to be, updated slightly to kind of reflect the finished product, because as they've been sort of published on Drive-Thru RPG, and at the moment they've been I've set the price point very, very low. It's like, hey, if you want to support my work, like they're it costs a $5, but also like I kind of recognize like this kind of isn't finished. The game design's finished, but the presentation isn't.
Sure.
But the idea is that once those are finished, they're going to be finished products. And if you're interested in my game design, but you want just a finished game where you can buy the book and it's all there and it's all nicely laid out and illustrated and it's a cool, fun, complete game, that's going to be Praxis Classic. If you're down for something that's going to be constantly evolving and where there's going to be new content, probably roughly monthly with expansions and like new powers and weapons and lore and tweaks to mechanics and weird new stuff, that's going to be Praxis Irrational.
Cool.
On that note,
I feel like
I was going to say, I've kind of, been talking a little bit about Ufpao Zako, so I kind of just wanted to touch on like the core part of Ufpao Zako. Because I mentioned like all my games have like this core centerpiece of creative interpretation. And with Ufpao Zako, that is the superpower system. And the way that works is when you create your character, you pick 2 power sets. There's a big list of like 80-something of these in the book. And what those do is they define what your powers can do and set some loose limitations on them. For example, the Fiery Blast power set is, literally all that does. It defines that you have the ability to create and manipulate flames. You might combine that with like force field. You can create force fields to protect yourself and others of various shapes and sizes. And then those sort of put some limits on what your powers can do. But again, you don't have like individual attacks written on your character sheet. Instead, every single time you use those powers, every time you are in a fight or are using them in non-combat, you get to decide exactly what they do within the limits defined by your power sets. And then you handle that by using just a governing attribute for that power set and one of 4 simple skills, which are basically buffing, debuffing, offense, and defense. And then based on what you roll, the GM then makes a judgment call based on CM Crime Master, actually. I love my weird. I love coming up with specific terms for the game master.
Totally.
Then makes a judgment call. And again, there are really robust guidelines for helping them interpret this. It's like, okay, this is in the bounds of your power set. That's perfectly fine. This is how well you rolled. Here's what you were trying to do. Here's what actually happens. And it allows for so much creativity in using your powers and blending the power sets without being restricted to, like, I have a fireball power, and I have a cone of fire power, and I have a fire nova power. And instead it can be a case of, you know what? I'm going to run up to this guy. I'm going to grab him in the bear hug, and then I'm going to flame on. Okay.
Yeah.
Roll offense.
Yeah. Well, and I think this to me, this more accurately reflects at least kind of the modern reality of comics. I think, classic Silver, Gold Age and before, like, they're very, very defined power sets. But I think one of the things that's happened more recently is this idea that, again, if we look at kind of the classic mutant example, like, their mutant powers activate, but then you have to explore them and develop them and figure out what they do and where those limitations are. It's not just a standard set of things. And I think where I'm going this is my problem as I've explored, like, the Marvel Multiverse RPG and, like, some similar ones that are they're very like D&D in that your powers are essentially like spells, and there's a raw rules as written way you can use them. And it's not open to, okay, I just can manipulate fire. What can I do with that in this moment?
Not new. That was what I said. Those power sets have been very carefully designed, so they provide just enough restrictions on what you can do that it forces you to think creatively. You can't do anything, but that's the game. Is I have these restrictions, but they're still quite open. What cool shit can I do within those limitations? And I have seen people do so much awesome stuff with that. I remember once we had a character who was the beekeeper, who had taken a power set who had taken powers for swarm manipulation, where, like, they could, like, control, like, swarms of, like, insects or vermin. The idea behind the power set was it'd be something like a rat catcher character. But they combined it with discorporation, which allowed them to transform their body into, like, a mist or smoke or something. So they asked, like, hey, can I blend those and turn myself into a swarm of bees? And my response was, of course, yes, you absolutely can.
Yeah, why would you? No, absolutely.
And again, the mechanics of the game allow for that perfectly. Those bolts both fall within the limitations of their power sets. So you want to turn into a swarm of bees, fly up around your enemies and sting them to bits. Okay, roll your mind plus, which is your governing attribute, plus offense. You want to turn into a swarm of bees and, like, disperse into multiple swarms, like you're splitting your consciousness, so you can, like, keep an eye on the battlefield from, like, different angles. That's sort of like helping your allies. So we'll call that your mind plus utility, since, like, it could be a buff. And based on how well they roll, they'll get, like, hints, or they'll do damage or whatever.
Yeah, awesome. I love that. That is, like, again, I really appreciate the emphasis in all the games that we've touched on of how much is left up to the players and to the GM to both determine exactly what you are able to do in the game and determine whether or not that's successful and keep those story beats going, rather than a very linear, railroaded, more dogmatic approach, if we call it that. Yeah.
Also, a very sort of hard mechanical thing. This is, like, an important, like, safety net, I guess, is that unless you literally roll no successes, you're always going to do something. Like, even if what you were trying to do is well outside the scope of how well you rolled. Effects are grouped into groups of closely related sets, so there will always be a similar effect you can downgrade to. Like, a really simple example is, like, okay, my superhero has ice powers. I want to try and freeze this bad guy solid. I didn't roll very well. I can't completely encase them in ice and, medically incapable of action. So we're going to downgrade that effect to in immobilization. They're moving very erratically. They're moving very erratically. You're not able to keep the beam trained on that long, but you manage to catch their feet in some thick ice, which stops them in their tracks.
Yeah. Cool. This may be an overly broad question, but I think in inching towards, vaguely inching towards wrapping up, are there things that you learned early in game design that you would tell people that are trying to get started, or the standard, what is your advice for people who'd like to try their hand at game design? Like something in that general direction, as someone
Absolutely.
with a lot of experience across many genres.
My biggest piece of advice is, again, this goes into the kind of games I like, the kind of games that I try to build, which is decide what you want to do with your work. Pick a genre that you want to lean into the tropes of. Pick a feel that you want to go for, a kind of game that you want to make, and lean into it as hard as you can. Don't try and do everything. If you try and make a game that does everything, then you're going to end up with something that does nothing well. But if you pick the thing that you want to do well and you do it the best you possibly can, then it's not going to be for everyone, but that's my favorite kind of art. Like, I love niche art. And the most special art to me is the stuff that isn't for everyone, because that means that when I find something that isn't for everyone, it is for me, because it speaks to something that I'm super interested in, that I love, that makes me feel and fires my imagination. That's why I love all the goth and punk bands that I do. It's like, a lot of that music is not for a lot of people, and that's fine. But that's what makes it special to me, because it's not generic. It speaks to my psyche, my interests, my life experiences. And the same kind of thing with game design. If I want a horror game, I want a game that leans super hard into horror. If I want a game about being superheroes and standing up for your community and fighting supervillains, I want a game that leans super hard into that feel. If I want a game like Dungeons and Dragons that is about delving into dungeons and fighting monsters and claiming loot and feeling like this badass adventure, I want a game that leans super hard into that. Pick what you want to do
around the fringes.
Don't try and please everyone, because
you honestly, will inevitably please no one.
But if you pick the thing, if you pick something that you are interested in and you lean into it, you're gonna find fellow weirdos who love that thing, and that community is something worth building.
It's true. It's very true. Well, I think it's time to ask the extremely important questions. I want to add one. I'm going to spring this on you a little bit, but I want to add one since we've been talking about superheroes, and I want to ask what set of superhero powers you would most like to have if you could have any. And I can provide my answer if that would help, but
go for it.
I used to ask, sure. I used to introduce myself to, like, I taught kids circus for a long time, and at a certain point I was like, I need to know everyone's name, and I want to know what superhero power they have, because they're always really excited about it, and it tells me a little bit about who that kid is. For myself, I waffle back and forth between super speed and flight. And occasionally I'm like, well, teleportation. But like those are the big ones. I like speed really appeals to me from an aesthetic level, from a sheer, I hate traffic and I hate the distance and length of time it takes me to travel places. Very similar, honestly, with flight and teleportation, like leaning into I could just instantaneously be somewhere that currently takes me 17 hours to fly or whatever it might be. But those are mine.
I have thought about this question for most of my life. Another thing that I do on the rare, I don't really play as much anymore because I GM so often. But even as a GM, I have a lot of self-insert characters sort of in the canon of my games. They're like canonical heroes and background characters who often kind of start as kind of self-interest, like like a DM PC. I just kind of end up putting the backgrounds almost like an Easter egg for myself. And there is, in fact, a character in Ufpao Zako called Poltergeist, who is very much like both. If I were to play Ufpao Zako, this is the character I would make, and also in real life, if I could have superpowers, you better believe I would use them to try and be a vigilante, which probably wouldn't go well for me, but I would try.
You never know. And I think it really depends on the powers.
Yeah, and what powers I want, I would pick is wall crawling. I want to be able to scale walls like Spider-Man, and intangibility. Because I feel like there's so much utility in those, both for mobility, for being able to get out of sticky situations possible, for being able to get other people to safety if you can literally phase yourself and others through harm, and not have to worry about barriers to getting people to safety. That, I think is really cool. And also it leans into a very ghost sort of aesthetic, which is very much my thing.
That's really cool.
So I even
would say that is one
like,
that I've not heard that much about.
If I did have those powers, I would hope that, this chance to like help people and, be a hero and protect people when the cops won't, which is always, would inspire me to actually take up martial arts again. I actually did wushu senchu kung fu when I was younger, though I haven't done it in 10 years and I'm very out of shape now. But with the proper motivation, I would want to try and get into
protecting your community might certainly be the proper motivation for such a thing.
I think I would go for something like Eskrima, and focus on fighting with a staff, because inspired particularly by Japanese class of weapons. Is it the sobu? I'm probably getting that word wrong, but it's a class of feudal Japanese weapons, which were specifically designed for crowd control. They were things like staves topped with sort of pronged hooks, and things. The tonfa was one of these class of weapons, because the idea is that they're not meant primarily to hit people. You can, it's a big stick, but they're mostly meant for corralling people.
Yeah, it's so shove this whole group of people out of the way with some leverage. So
it's that idea, because I want my priority to be, it's like, sometimes you're fighting a Nazi and you just got to deck them in the teeth. But my big priority is people are in danger. I need to get the people who are trying to hurt them out of the way, and I need to get the people who are in harm's way to safety.
That is a much more, I think, altruistic view than many people take about when asked this question. I admit mine is focused on my own personal gain in a lot of ways.
Still very useful.
100%. Well, and continue our truly important questions. Your favorite character class and subclass.
So my favorite
multiples. Multiples are always acceptable.
I do have one pretty clear answer. Actually, is it all right if I go on just one quick tangent? Since we're
no, please do.
Class, because you asked about classes for Ghosts and Gargoyles, and I meant to talk about some of the interesting classes that I had, because I have some weird ones. First 100%. Of all, some of them kind of work differently. For example, bards. One thing I don't like about bards in D&D is they're just wizards who play a music, which is fun, but like I really love this idea that bards aren't magic at all. They're minstrels, they're entertainers who are so good at what they do that they can inspire armies and kowtow warlords. So that's how bards work in Ghosts and Gargoyles. You are not magic. You are a minstrel. You are a jester. You are some kind of entertainer.
An orator. Yeah.
And you are so good at what you do that you are able to replenish your allies' very souls by bolstering them with your music in battle, and fill the role of something like a war drummer. To intimidate and weaken your enemies through sheer force of musical prowess. Also got classes where I've got several classes built around. I've got a class, or there was a knight class, which is built around mounted combat, because I have extensive rules for mounted combat. I tried to lead into the idea like there are multiple fighting styles and different ways you can fight. There are multiple perks related to mounted combat and to dual wielding, archery. There are multiple. There are trick shots or special attacks you can do with arrows, as well as different kinds of arrows, broadheads and bodkins and fowling arrows, which have masterwork effects, similar to different kinds of weapons. So again, you have options as an archer. And the knight class, also one of their specialty is mounted combat, any attack made from horseback. And also, you are a knight. You are a member of the landed nobility. You are a very important person in the society of this fantasy world. You have retainers and a support system, and presumably land or some such if it works that way. You have a lot of social and sort of political influence, and you can also use Praxis dice on any social role where you can leverage your title.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and I got a Beastmaster class based around based around taming animals. There are also two different archer classes, because there's the ranger, but the ranger is not defined by being an archer. They're defined by being a wilderness scout, a tracker. So their specialties are, they lend themselves very naturally to kind of this hunter role and using a bow and arrow, but their actual specialty is you can use Praxis dice on any roll made to track monsters, people, or animals. But then drawing the distinction between that is your kind of classic, like, high fantasy, Ranger of the Woods, or Aragorn. But that's actually not how historical archers were. Because, like, in an actual battle, a battle archer is carrying a massive war bow. They're up on battlements. They don't have their arrows on their back. Most archers did not carry arrows like that. They would have them either on their hip or literally in a basket next to them, because they're not moving. They're on the castle battlements. So the bowman class is that kind of archer where you have trained to use the bow, not just for hunting, but for war. And that's where they get Praxis. They can use Praxis dice on all attacks with bows and arrows. Actually, one of the only two classes where you can get a specialty in weapons. The other being the sellsword, which is basically the fighter, who gets to pick a type of weapon like swords or maces or axes. My favorite subclass in D&D and really in any game is the paladin. I love being the hero. I love the idea of a knight in shining armor, even though it is historically basically complete nonsense. Knights are landed nobility. They are historically part of the ruling class and enforcers of oppressive power structures. But I love that fantasy of, like, what if that wasn't the case? What if this fantasy of, like, these people who have privilege and who have the money and who genuinely use it to help people? What if that were true? Because I want that to be true. And I love the paladin as well, because it also kind of ties that into religion, where it's this idea of, like, this is a world where, the gods are definitively real. And again, here are people, and I love the idea of, like, this is real, and here are people who use, that faith, not to, kowtow people,
not to oppress,
not to oppress through demanding blind obedience, but who use, that power to help. And who, the gods and ghosts and girls are very much sort of embodied ideals. They all represent causes. And the idea is that followers like clerics and paladins serve the god, but really only insofar as they serve the cause.
Right.
I think kind of a similar idea reflects the oaths. Of oaths in D&D. I kind of a little iffy on the idea of oaths, because I also like the idea of, this idea of, like, holy warriors, and leaning to ideas like, this is a fantasy world where, gods and goddesses and these otherworldly entities are definitively real. And I feel like you're by divorcing it from that, like, it helps you remove some of the sort of, like, sociopolitical hangups, which is kind of positive, but it kind of makes it less interesting to me. So I had this idea of, like, can I do both? Can I acknowledge that, these institutions are frequently used to oppress people and rule through fear? But this is a fantasy world, so what if that wasn't always the case? What if there are a group of people buried in these organizations? What if, these are, these are, literal gods that are worshipped, but they also represent these causes, and there are these people who dedicate themselves more to the cause than to the entity, and by the power they get through that, they use to be heroes.
To me, I think it's really interesting. You this class, as you said, is the intersection of essentially local government and religion, the two systems that in our world are probably some of the most oppressive, historically speaking, that are around and that have been around for most of human history. And to try to take a character steeped in these two very oppressive systems in our world and make them someone that is not that. And that definitively stands for something opposed to those ideas.
And this kind of touches on something else you touched earlier, this idea of, like, classic fantasy having a lot of racist undertones. Is I want in a lot of my work, I want to capture those ideas where I try and strike a balance between both delivering, like, the classic high fantasy experience and the tropes that people want, while also acknowledging moral complexity and acknowledging serious issues. So, like, in this world, like this, the world building of Ghosts and Gargoyles does not shy away from the fact, like, this is a feudal society. peasants are, kowtowed by, cruel overlords and worked to the bone. And, a lot of those in power are, steeped in these religious institutions that enforce these things. But there's also more to it in that, the gods, like, while a lot of these religious institutions can be used to oppress people, there are also literal gods who are rewarding the faithful with power, and those faithful have free will with what they do with that power. And those gods also represent causes, and not all of those causes are benign. There are gods of things like eugenics and rule through fear and the right of the strong to conquer the weak. But there are also gods of things like the sanctity of all life and of healing and of the responsibility of the responsibility of those in power to protect the people who they rule. And it allows for this complexity of it doesn't ignore the bad while also leaving room for you to make your knight in shining armor. And I do a similar thing with orcs, because like it's part of the classic high fantasy game. Like you want to like defend the village from the orcish horde, but I also didn't want to just regurgitate these, these very othering concepts. So the idea that I came up with is that a lot of the races of Ur, the world of ghosts and girls, were created directly by the gods. These are the fairy races, and then through the intermingling of those bloodlines, you get you get other races that are kind of the result of mixing of fairy bloodlines. These are things like dwarves and elves are kind of the main fairy races. They are the oldest.
Right.
Dwarves are created by the gods with this idea of like they will shape the land, they will craft things. Elves, my version of elves are actually inspired primarily by Indigenous American mythology, because I want to lean into the idea that they're nomadic.
Yeah.
They don't build cities, they don't build castles, at least not permanent ones, because the idea is that they were created by the gods to live in harmony with nature. They adapt to their environment and they leave it largely untouched. That's why there are multiple kinds of elves. There are sand elves, there are dark elves, there are wood elves, because the original elves have spread out and evolved into these different sub-races, whereas the dwarves have also spread out but have remained mostly the same because they shape their environments. And with I call them the Kresh races, which are orcs, hobgoblins, bugbears, and goblins. They were created by those dark gods, the gods of eugenics and the right of the strong to rule the weak. And their society is based around the worship of those gods of these, causes to conquer. So they are cast very naturally as antagonists, but they're still living beings with free will and with complexity. So there are stats for those races and sort of an explanation that you're not really meant to play one of the Kresh races because you're going to be very othered by society, but the rules, and you can't really play that game unless that's like a focus of your campaign is one or more of the players being one of these Kresh races. And unless that's a focus of your campaign, it's probably not something you want in the background. But if you want that to be a focus of the campaign, the resources are there for you, and they're also there for you to acknowledge that every orc you meet is not going to be this bloodthirsty monster. They have the capacity to transcend their own society and to say no. That no, our building our entire society around raiding others and murdering and pillaging is not right, and I'm not going to abide by it. So that was kind of the balance I struck. Was like I'm trying to acknowledge like the moral complexity there and give people the tools to tell more morally ambiguous and more complex stories, while also giving them the tools to also say, if you just want a classic high fantasy experience where there are clear bad guys and you can save the day with sword and shield, having that escapist fantasy also has value.
I think there's a lot of value in escapism, especially now. I don't know. Maybe more so than in past.
And favorite subclass. Probably something like Oath of Protection. Again, I love filling the defender role. I love being the knight in shining armor. Also, I usually gravitate towards again 5th edition. Took paladins away from necessarily being religious, but because I sort of like that aspect, I do usually make my paladins holy knights, and I usually go for worship of god or goddess of darkness, the moon, death. I really love the idea of a character who This also comes back to my love for Artix Entertainment, because this is what Artix is. He's a paladin who has dedicated his life to freeing the souls of the undead so they can be at peace. And I love those kinds of characters who, focus on fighting the darkness. And I'm very fascinated by funeral imagery and world funeral practices. So I love making characters who worship gods of death and who fill roles in a thing where it's like they who are protectors of graveyards against necromancers who go out and take these people who defile the sacred dead and help those souls be at peace. So I tend to go for like the Raven Queen or Saloon or something like that.
Sure. Cool. I love that. The like redeeming or freeing the souls of undead, or what would happen to their souls. I think that hits something for me that really, honestly, I think that really speaks to the core of some of these fantasy games, where you get to do these things. You get to do the things that are not necessarily possible, but ours would still be deeply impactful, right? I think there is a lot of many words and many hours of discussion spent on what happens to the soul of something that is raised undead within D&D, within classic fiction, within fantasy tropes. And I don't know. There's one answer, and there's never not necessarily like a right answer, but to have a character where you're like, whatever is happening, the important thing is that the undead need to not be there so they can rest. Yeah. I think that's really interesting.
I want to shout is Dragon Fable is free to play online, and the Necropolis quest, which is kind of built around the character of Artix and a war against the undead, is very much centered around this whole idea, and it is one of the best written quests in any video game I've ever seen. It is so good. It's the kind of storytelling we do in those games with such simple mechanics. Like they're not browser based anymore; they have their own app, but it's still built on that same thing. It's Flash. It's literally Flash. It's literally Flash animation. But the amount of storytelling, the amount of depth they do, and that are also like geared towards kids. Like I started playing these games when I was like 10, and that's their core demographic. But the amount of emotional complexity and like depth they put in their world building, their story, and like that quest line especially, it's so good. Yeah.
Well, I think this is one of the things that like there is a tendency to assume that things that are aimed towards preteen, young teens are not sophisticated, are very simplistic, are not going to make you feel a thing. And I think that is inaccurate. I think not only are we as society starting to make more media and games and things to be consumed by that bracket that are actually applicable to larger ages, but also those kids are smart, man.
Yeah.
They can handle more complicated things and more complicated storytelling. Anywho, on that note, on the complicated story note, there will be links for Dragon Fable and links for all of the things in the show notes. But GWILYM, where can people find you, or where can people find your games online, assuming they've listened so far and will hear it?
Yes. So if you are interested in my work, you can find me on most social medias. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Threads. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm technically on Facebook, though I hardly use Facebook. So one of the other three is much better to find me on. I have a link tree, which I believe should be in the show notes. With all of those, I'm either Praxis.games or Praxis.studios on all of them, I believe. I sell my games on DriveThruRPG and itch.io. By the time this is published, at least the final first edition of Ghosts and Gargoyles will be up, and the final editions, first editions of Ufpao Zako and Bloodletting will be following shortly, with Irrational in the works.
Yes, they will.
Also, in my link tree, I have had the immense privilege to work with some amazing artists, very dear friends. Jenny Q Arts, my dear friend Levi, Brackets Leroy, an amazing horror artist, music journalist, and cornerstone of the horror punk community, and my very dear friend Mabney on Arboretum. So if you maybe not into my games, but really like the art on the covers, they all do commissions, and they're all linked in my bio. with everything that's going on in the world, I am, for the foreseeable future, I want to build community. I want to try and give back. So for the foreseeable future until the world gets better, which may never happen, but damn, we're going to fight for it.
We hope.
I am going to be donating the first $75 of my profits every single month to charity. I am working on a list of charities helping people in the US, in the UK, in Ukraine, in Gaza, Sudan, and all over the world. I'm trying to vet those charities as thoroughly as I can, and I'm going to be donating to a new one every month. And only if I make more than $75 will any of that money be put back into Praxis Studios itself.
Support artists and art and people making it. Don't go fucking have AI make something for you.
Exactly.
Right.
And also, remember, I love niche arts. I make weird shit. There's a very real possibility that my work simply isn't for you, and that's perfectly okay. Maybe you're not into what I'm into. That's fine. But I promise you, there are amazing human artists out there who are making art, music, games, short films, books, comics, everything that is going to speak to you like nothing else in this world is. Put in the effort, get on socials, get on DriveThruRPG, get on Bandcamp, find the art, the films, the games, the music that means something to you. And support cool weirdos doing cool weird things.
Right? I mean, I could not agree more. I do think our audience will probably select to be really fucking interested in these games. So guys, go check out Praxis Games. Come on, what are you waiting for? While you're at it, why don't you give The Roll Report a follow on our social medias? We are at The Roll Report Cast on Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. And if you really like what we're doing, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/The Roll Report for as little as $1 a month.
The art of patronage goes all the way back to medieval times. This is how the great bards were able to make art.
Right? If you ever wondered how all these fucking Renaissance painters were able to do it, it's because someone else just said, here's a lot of money, go paint.
It's because somebody cared about what they were doing and wanted to support it.
Do that to the art that you like and want to support, because if everyone did that, people that made art could actually afford to live and eat in places that they want to.
In an ideal world, artists would not have to worry about being about that, and we would just be able to create art for art's sake. But
we'll dream and manifest the post-capitalist future that we deserve.
Unfortunately, for the moment, we live under capitalism, and that means you gotta eat, you gotta put a roof over your head. So another piece of advice I want to give in that vein is something that I've sort of had to unlearn myself is I always had this idea, especially with music on like Bandcamp, of like, I don't want to pay an insultingly low amount. Literally anything is a net positive there, especially when you're dealing with like digital products. Like if there is an album that is on there for $5, like that's still $5 that artists didn't have before, and it's a sale that shows them that like, hey, people are interested, people care. And if that's all you can afford, you're still helping. That's still great. If there's someone you want to support on Patreon, like an amazing podcast who's interviewing cool people and playing cool games, like even $1 a month, like is it all they didn't have before, and shows them like, hey, there are people who are willing to support what I do within their means. And like, we're all struggling, don't spend money that you don't have that's going to make yourself suffer, but we're all in this together.
And absolutely, that your $1 can make a big difference to us, to whoever you want to spend it on. GWILYM, thank you so much for joining us and articulating so many of the values that we at the Roll Report have so well. I really appreciate your time. It's been an absolute
pleasure.
Yeah. Until next time, friends and rollers, support local artists. I'm not going to say keep rolling dice. I'm going to say go support your local artists. Find someone you like, buy something of theirs, and let them know. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.